White Haven Sanatorium.
You know. So back in the day when ICP was signed to Jive Records, we used to take many trips back and forth to New York, and we would drive all the time. And it was always pretty much, it was like me, Joe and Joey, and Alex Abbas. Like, and we used to take these business trips out to New York, you know, just to discuss like music videos and stuff like that. So these drives along Highway 80 were pretty boring, and especially when you pass through Pennsylvania, because it was all woods and like mountains, and there really wasn't much to see, you know, besides the beauty of nature. So anyway, one of the times when we were coming back from New York, you know, we were passing through the eastern part of Pennsylvania, and we were noticing all these like big ass fucking mountains, you know. They don't look like your traditional mountain, you know, with all rocks and with ice on the top, but they're these huge like mountains covered in trees. The only way to correctly describe it is like a gigantic hill, you know what I mean, that went up like crazy high. And so we decided, like, I came up with the idea, like, just to break up the monotony of the drive, hey, let's climb one of those mountains. You know, and as soon as I said it, everybody was like, all right, hell yeah, let's do it, you know? So I was like, all right, the next big-ass fucking mountain we see, we're gonna pull over and climb that bitch. So sure enough, we came around the bend, and there it was. This humongous-ass fucking mountain. It was just going high up into the sky, you know? And this was in the middle of the day, and it just looked awesome, you know? And we were like, all right, fucking test of the ninja, we gotta climb that bitch. So we pulled the car as close to the mountain as we could actually get. And then we got out, we started just cutting through the woods, you know, and there was deep ass woods, and the grade just went straight the fuck up. Now the first thing we came across when we were climbing up this mountain was an old crumbling stone wall, you know, and this wall basically went to the left and right as far as we could see, and surrounded the apex of this mountain, okay? So the wall was pretty huge, and it wasn't that tall. It probably stood about 4 feet tall. So we started walking along the wall just to try to find a way to get into it, you know, to get past the wall without having to climb over it. And that's when we seen this sign. And the sign said it was all, you could barely read it because it was all like just kind of faded through time, and you know, and it was like there was all these vines overgrowing on it. So we actually had to clear it a little bit away from the overgrowth just to read it. But it was the White Haven Sanatorium. We all started saying, whoa, what the fuck is that? You know what I mean? Like, what the hell is a sanatorium, you know? So we were like, okay, so, you know, there's a little bit of a mystery there. Anyway, we finally found an opening through the wall. We went in and we kept climbing up, and further and further and further. I mean, it probably took us about an hour to get through the undergrowth and all that, get to the top. Now, the first thing we noticed was a building. It looked like a huge, ancient, rundown, abandoned facility that had probably about 6 to 8 large 3-story tall buildings that looked like hospitals. I mean, that's the only way to describe it. Like, but not any hospital that I've ever seen or we've ever seen. It was basically hospitals from like the 1940s or something. They looked very stark, without character, like just straight boxes, you know. They were L-shaped, and they had many, many windows on the sides. And there was like these giant white steps that went up in this kind of grandiose way with these giant pillars on either side of them that you would enter into these buildings. And so we looked around and we realized, I mean, for lack of a better term, it was a ghost town. Like, completely abandoned. Altogether, there must have been at least 20 buildings, you know, including like the houses and the giant hospital type buildings. There was an abandoned church in the middle of everything. There was some other buildings that, you know, were completely abandoned, that it was hard to tell what they were. So we started to explore these buildings. Now, the first thing, when we went into one of the hospital buildings, there was just this feeling of foreboding over the whole place. Like it just had you on edge. Like everybody was like kind of scared as they walked around. The hairs were rising on your arms, you know. and you just felt uncomfortable, like something wasn't quite right here. You know, even in the, you know, it was broad daylight and everything, and it was just like, still there was this like feeling of dread. Now, exploring through the building, one of the things that I noticed that I think is worth noting is the fact that there was very little graffiti anywhere in the building. It's like, not only was this place abandoned, but none of the locals, nobody went there. You know what I mean? It was like a place that probably the locals realized was like, you know, stay the fuck away from that place. You know, you don't ever want to go there. So anyway, we explored a couple of these buildings, and the unease as we were exploring intensified. Some of the rooms, there was like, they were filled from floor to ceiling with furniture that was just all thrown in there, like broken chairs and fucking filing cabinets and shit all piled up. And dust was everywhere. Most of the windows were broken. So finally, we got to the roof of one of the hospital buildings, and I looked at my brother, and as we stood on top of the roof, and we could overlook like the whole forest, like we were on top of a mountain, on top of this 3-story tall building, overlooking this like relatively beautiful landscape of just rolling hills and mountains and trees. And whenever me and my brother would get in a situation like this, and Joey, it's something we started when we were little kids, you know, we would yell out, you know, just as a show of like triumphing something, like we beat it, you know what I'm saying? We conquered it, we came, we explored, you know, we beat it. So we all screamed that out at the top of our lungs, you know, and it just echoed through the hills. And as soon as we did that, we noticed all of a sudden these hunters came out of the trees, like, you know what I mean, like real far away, like hundreds of yards, but they came out of the trees with their rifles, and they were kind of looking up at us. And we were like, oh shit, you know, we probably ruined it for them, you know, spooked all their game or whatever. We were like, let's get the fuck out of here, you know. We all got all amped up and shit, and we started like running through the building, and you know, we wanted to get out of there before we got killed by some hunter, like Deliverance style or something. So we fucking just kept running, and we ran down the side of the hill, and you know, and basically we made our escape. So anyway, like we went back home, and I started to do research on the White Haven Sanatorium. Now what I came up with researching it on the internet is that it was basically built in 1901. And from 1901 to 1956, it served as a sanatorium. And basically what a sanatorium is a place for patients with tuberculosis to go to isolate them. And for most of them, they would die there. Tuberculosis was like it's basically a disease that attacks the lungs, and it's easily spread through like coughing and sneezing and stuff like that. So when somebody caught the disease, they were sent to a sanatorium to basically stay until they eventually were cured. You know, they stopped having the signs and symptoms of it, or they died. So throughout the course of its history, over 25,000 people were actually went there and were isolated there, half of which died. So you think about that, how many thousands of people died right on that spot? So it occurred to me that this place is a spiritual haunting ground. You know, all the ghosts, all the people that died horrible, slow deaths right on that spot. That's where they would end their lives, and some of them it took years. They suffered for years before they died. So it really started to dawn upon me why this place had such a dreadful a feeling, like why it was so intense. Now, after 1956, the place was turned into an insane asylum. Okay, now back in those days, in insane asylum, the prevailing methods of treatment, they emphasized segregation from society, physical containment in padded cells, restraint, and shock therapy. Basically, all the horrors that you hear about insane asylums back in the day, this is where this shit took place, on the same fucking grounds. It's almost like the ground itself was tainted with this evil throughout the course of its whole history, anything that's ever been done there has all been revolving around death, suffering, torture, just the worst of the human experience, the worst of the mortal experience. So there's probably many, many spirits that are still dwelling upon the grounds. Now, it was at that moment where I came up with a ninja mission. Now, ninja missions to us throughout our days since early childhood was whenever you had an idea to explore an abandoned building or, sneak into a foreign country or whatever the fuck the case may be, you would call it a ninja mission. And you would present it to, we would present it to our crew like, man, I got this fresh ass ninja mission. We're gonna do this, And so my ninja mission was we were gonna spend the night at the White Haven Sanatorium. Just the idea of it terrorized me. So I got together with a group of my friends, and we basically, I pitched the idea to everybody. And basically I got together a crew of about 8 people. Now, Joe and Joy weren't able to go on this particular ninja mission because they were busy with other things. But Alex, who used to be the president of Psychopathic, he was there, and about 7 of my other friends. And we loaded up in 2 cars, and we chose the day that we were going to go, which was in the beginning of October, and we drove there. Now, when we got there, we decided that we were going to park the cars far enough away so that they wouldn't be bothered, they wouldn't be parked illegally or something. The cops would find them. So we actually parked the car in a neighborhood in White Haven. Now, we had everything we needed for the ghost hunting experience. We have the Ouija board, we had writing utensils and supplies for ghost scribing, and we had cameras, voice recorders, everything. We came well prepared. So we basically got to the edge of the mountain, and we climbed it just as the sun was setting. And we decided that no matter what, we were not going to leave those grounds until the sun came up, no matter what happened. That was the ninja mission. So when we got there, the sun had completely set. Okay, now, we decided that we were going to break up into small groups that was going to be basically three people each, and separate and start exploring the buildings. And then after 2 hours, we were going to all meet back at the abandoned church to talk about our experiences. So we split up. Now, I was with Tall Jess, who's one of the co-creators of Morton's List, and also Brad. And we separated off, and we started with exploring one of the hospital buildings. Now, entering this building in the dead of night with nothing but flashlights was an experience that's almost impossible to describe. I mean, the only kind of safety net that we had was the fact that we were with people, you know what I'm saying? But we entered this building, and a lot of times we kept hearing noises, so we were like, oh, shh, just stop. And we'd sit and listen and be quiet. And you just hear all these noises, you could swear in the background, you could hear voices talking, people walking. The building, of course, was shifting in the wind, creaking, even groaning. And it was hard not to let your imagination just start running wild, And so then, as long as we didn't hear anything real close to us, we kept going, we kept moving through the building. But every once in a while, you'd hear this loud boom, this loud bang, you know what I mean? But it was almost like a thud, real close. There's just no way to describe it. And then we'd stop, and we'd all be looking at each other in terror, our flashlights moving around, what the fuck was that, So we got to this one room in particular that it was on the 3rd floor of one of the hospital buildings, and we entered it. It was a corner room, and the door was shut. So we opened it, and inside this room was completely abandoned. All the paint was peeling, all chipped. in this particular room, none of the windows were broke. And when we left the room, we left the door open. So we were about halfway down this hallway when all of a sudden the door slammed shut. And we all stopped and we all looked at each other again all crazy, and we looked back at the room, and your adrenaline's all flowing, your heart's beating 100,000 times a minute, and you're just like, you're just looking around like terrified, like, oh shit, what do we do? So we went back there and we decided we had to confront our fears. So we went back there and we opened the door again. And we just looked at it, and it was just sitting there. And we like went into the room. We were like looking around to see if anything changed, and nothing had. So we started leaving again. And we got about halfway down the hallway. The door was still open when suddenly it slammed shut again. So we were like, oh shit, and we just started running. Just the panic just overtook us, and we were like, get the fuck out of here. And we just started running for our lives. So we hauled ass all the way out the building and got outside. Now, right about when we got outside, we started like yelling for people, hey, come here. And pretty soon everybody gathered to our location. Like, whoa, what's going on? And we're like, man, we started explaining it, the door slamming shut, da-da-da. So then everybody was like, all right, fuck it, we got to go back there. This is probably a haunted room or a haunted area. We got to take mad pictures. So we went back to that room and we sat in the room. First, we took a bunch of pictures, Then we tried the ghost writing, which is kind of like where you let your hand go limp and you start writing stuff, and in the hopes that like a ghost will like kind of possess your hands and start writing to communicate. And Alex, he started talking to the ghost, he was like, if there's a ghost here, can you open the door? Because we had shut the door when we came in. After we got done, we left, because like we were probably there for about a half hour and nothing was really happening. So we left, and this time we shut the door, So we were walking down the hallway, and it was me, Jesse, and Brad were the last to leave. And we were about halfway down the hallway when the doors suddenly opened. Like we heard the click as if somebody turned the knob, and we saw the door swing open. We looked at each other, we looked at the door, and we just fucking ran. It's like, we didn't fucking know what to think at that point. Like, it was the very thing that Alex asked us to do, to give us a sign, because the whole time the door was shutting, it was slamming shut. And now here's this door opening, so we basically took off. When we caught up to everybody, we frantically told them what happened, and everybody was pretty unanimous on not going back there. Okay, so then after that, like we explored for a little bit more, like we were just coming in the random rooms, snapping pictures and all that, and then we finally survived the night, and as soon as daylight started coming up, we got the fuck out of there, because the whole place just creeped us the fuck out. Now here's the thing about this ghost hunting experience. When we got back, there was about like 6 different cameras that people were taking pictures with, and we developed the film, and we listened to the tape recordings, and the tape recordings had some really weird, like kind of like background shit going on, but nothing definitive, like we didn't hear no voices on there or anything like that. But when we developed the pictures, we developed them all together, and we took everybody's pictures, and we started sifting through it. And I don't know if you're familiar with ghost orbs, but there in the photos, there's ghost orbs everywhere. And all of them are hovering right next to people's heads. They're just chilling like right by their fucking heads. And sometimes in some of the pictures there would be like 3 or 4 ghost orbs all like hovering right next to their heads. And the thing that makes it, to me, that makes it so remarkable is that's in all the photos from everybody's camera. It's not like there's a glitch or something from one camera or whatever. It's like in all the photos, they're all the same. The only other evidence of ghosts that we found was in one of the pictures that I developed. It was just a random room, and I just snapped a quick picture of that room. Later, when I developed the film, there floating in the window are 13 ghost orbs. And the thing that's so amazing about the photo is some of those orbs are in front of the window and some are behind the window, because the panes of glass, which creates a tic-tac-toe type pattern. The orbs that are in front of the window, you can see they're transparent, so you can see the lines from the tic-tac-toe glass-shaped patterns behind it. But the ones that are outside the room, those tic-tac patterns basically stand in front of it. So it's quite clear that some of those orbs are in the room and some are outside that room, but they're clustered right there by that window. As if there's just like, for some reason in that room, there's just mad ghosts just chilling all in that area. You know what I mean? So that fucking creeped me out. And that remains one of my most prized possessions, that photo. Because to me, it's clear evidence of the supernatural world. Like, I don't even know how you could deny it.
You know.
Falling down, falling down.
You know. You know.